Welcome back to the Board of County Commissioners Policy Session on August 3rd, 2021. Gary, what's up first?
Commissioners, your first policy session is Housing Authority Development Update. We have Devin Ellen from the Housing Authority of Clackamas County to present. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Commissioners. I'm Devin Ellen, Interim Director of Housing with the Housing Authority. I appreciate the opportunity to update you on the Housing Authority's development activities. Just a reminder, I'll be referencing the progress report included in your board packet. So first up, I have a brief update on our Housing Authority projects. Webster Road, our 48-unit permanent supportive housing project located in the city of Gladstone, is now into construction. Hazmat abatement and demolition are underway with rough-in and framing scheduled to start in October. The project is currently 9% complete and on track to complete construction next spring. Next up is Hillside Manor, our 100-unit tower located in the city of Milwaukee. This rehab project is nearing completion at 94% complete, with substantial completion slated for the end of September. All but 2 relocated households are now back in their original units. And I recently toured the building. It looks fantastic. So we're trying to schedule a grand opening in October, and we're excited to.
Yeah, I would be very interested in attending that. I remember what it used to look like.
Yeah, it looks great. So we'll keep you posted on that. And then located adjacent to Hillside Manor is Hillside Park. That's our public housing complex sited on nearly 14 acres, and it includes 100 units consisting of 1- and 2-bedroom bungalows originally built in the early 1940s. As you know, these units have exceeded their useful life, and the Housing Authority is opting to redevelop Hillside Park through HUD's Section 18 program. Just a reminder, the Section 18 program ensures that Section 8 rental assistance, vouchers, and relocation assistance is made available to every household residing in a converted public housing unit. We are finalizing our Section 18 application with the goal of submitting to HUD by the end of the summer. Concurrent with that process, we are finalizing our final development plan, which is our land use application for submission to the city of Milwaukee. If that is approved, that will grant us the comprehensive plan amendment and zone change we need in order to redevelop Hillside with up to 500 newly constructed units. We are working with Bronner Consulting to develop a strategic plan for the repositioning of our remaining public housing portfolio. This includes our 2 Oregon City developments and our scattered site portfolio. Bronner has extensive experience in the Northwest and specializes in working with housing authorities through the repositioning process, and we'll be sharing their findings with the board in an upcoming meeting.
Great, I look forward to that.
Yeah, I'll just pause here before I move on to our bond projects to see if anyone has questions.
And during that meeting, I would like a complete inventory of what we have, obviously, and then where they want to go. Who was up first? Mark?
Yes. What is the repositioning process?
Well, that's a great question. So to reposition public housing means to convert it to from HUD's public housing assistance to Section 8. So in lieu of just getting funding directly from HUD, folks would get Section 8 rental assistance for the project, if they choose to stay, it's for the project. If they choose to leave, they can go elsewhere. Okay. So it just gives us more local control over the projects.
Good.
Commissioner Salas?
I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm. The Hillside, the big building, that's the Manor, right?
Yeah.
So there's no added rooms. So still the 100 rooms about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's no additional rooms, and you said all but 2 have been put back in their original places. That's great. With regard to any new capacity in the system, are SDCs anticipated to be paid to all of those agencies wanting SDCs in the remainder of the Milwaukee site?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They will be paid. And most of them will also pay property tax aside from ones that are owned by the Housing Authority.
Okay. Is there any, my concern about that project, because there was a nearby project in Milwaukee that was supposed to happen, a for-profit housing on site, and apparently, the rumor is that the developer's pulling back because of the recent sharp rise in construction materials. Do we have concerns there on any of these projects?
I mean, certainly, it's always a concern. We'll just have to wait and see. I think as, you know, we come closer to finalizing our bids, you know, for the Webster Road project, we were able to hold.
Excuse me, I think he's having trouble hearing you. Can you just move your microphone closer to you and speak directly into the mic? Thank you very much.
Apologies.
That's all right.
I think it's, you know, just like I said, always a concern, but we were able to hold pricing on Webster Road. We're seeing lumber prices reduce. There's still escalations in certain materials, roofing, for example, but we're hoping that those begin to stabilize, and that's kind of the trend that we're seeing now.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, really like the handouts. I'm trying to think what page, it's page 5 of 8. And it has, I believe you call that Hillside Park is where we're going to be
Yes.
creating all the additional units. So it says that the estimated completion time is to be determined, I think, if I'm reading this right. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
Okay, could you just talk a little bit about that? And I know you've listed it out, but I don't really quite know what these things mean. There was a planning commission hearing held on March 23rd. There's a consultant, there's a coordination of phasing plan. I just don't know what these things mean. And kind of I know it's to be determined, but I want to get an idea of how long this is going to take.
Yeah, these are great questions. So the land use process is 2 parts. So we had a preliminary land use decision from the Planning Commission, and I believe we received unanimous approval.
Is this, excuse me, Oregon City or Clackamas County?
Milwaukee, City of Milwaukee,
On Hillside Manor
yes.
and Hillside Park?
Yes. And that was kind of the biggest heavy lift as far as the application and all the community outreach that was involved. So now we're working on our final application. Hopefully, we'll be submitting that within the next month or 2. That will go again to the Planning Commission for approval and then to City Council for adoption. So that will grant us the ability to increase the density as required. And so we envision the demolition to happen in 2 phases. If you look at this plan, basically the key in the corner, lots A, B, and C, we envision that being the phase 1 development. So we're hoping that we receive land use approval and HUD approval early next year. And then that triggers a 90-day relocation period. So we work to relocate all the units that are being demolished in phase 1, which is about 50% of the units. The other remaining tenants will stay in their units. And then, so, you know, with that timeline, we envision development, infrastructure, you know, taking off the middle of next year, with, construction starting on the units probably early 2023. And we estimate, an 18 to 24-month construction period. So 2025, I think those units would be coming online for phase 1. And then that would allow us to relocate anyone who wanted to in the phase 2 into phase 1. And then we would start on demolition and that process on the remaining lots.
Wow, takes so long. Is there any way to speed it up?
It's a process.
Yeah,
I think it's a
really a
process.
We considered doing demolition on all of the lots, but just with construction phasing, it's a really big project, and then we would be forced to relocate 100 units, and that can be really challenging in this rental market.
So the answer would be no. There's not a way to speed it up. I mean, it just seems like we've been at this one for the whole time I've been a commissioner almost. Maybe not. Maybe you could tell me exactly how long. It seems like a really long time.
Okay, oh, no, when I was a commissioner, we were considering doing this. We came up with the idea, so,
So back in the,
but getting there and, first of all, securing the funds was huge.
Securing the
That's huge.
funds, getting through the land use process
Land
and
use is-
community buy-in, I mean, that's really, we've seen from when I started at the Housing Authority in May of 2019, there was not a lot of community support for the project, and it
I
was
was gonna ask you
eye-opening
that.
at the Planning Commission meeting. We had just almost unanimous support from the community.
It's good, it's great.
yeah, that is amazing.
I was going to ask if there was any opposition. Well, I really thank the citizens of Milwaukee for embracing this.
And we have a lot of support from the mayor and city.
And it's
as
going to
well.
look good.
I think
Oh, it's
so.
going to be a great asset.
It's going to be a huge, wonderful asset.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great project, but it
Do you
will
want to
take some
continue
time.
with your presentation?
Yes, yes. Okay. So moving on to our regional housing bond-funded projects. The Fuller Road Station project is located at the Fuller Road Max Station. It consists of 100 units of affordable housing, 83 of which are 2 bedrooms or larger. This will include 30 units reserved for households with extremely low incomes, and 5 units reserved for households with incomes up to 80% of the area median income. Fuller Road is under construction and currently 14% complete. The project is out of the ground with slab-on-grade pours in process and shoring of the second floor concrete deck scheduled to start toward the end of the month. Construction completion is slated for fall of next year. Our next bond-funded project is the Good Shepherd Village project, which will be the City of Happy Valley's first regulated affordable housing development. This consists of 143 units, including 58 reserved for households with extremely low incomes, 35 of which will be permanent supportive housing, so paired with services. And it includes 80 units that are 2 bedrooms or larger. The project sponsor, Caritas Housing, received unanimous approval at their design review hearing and was recently awarded permanent supportive housing funding from Oregon Housing and Community Services. And last month, the project sponsors submitted for land use and building permits with the goal of starting construction early next year. Their estimated completion is mid-2023. Maple Apartments is our other bond-funded project located in Oregon City across Beaver Creek Road from Clackamas Community College. This project consists of 171 units, including 70 reserved for households with extremely low incomes, and 129 units that are 2 bedrooms or larger. The project sponsor, Community Development Partners, recently received their land use decision and conditions of approval and is scheduled to close construction financing in January with completion slated for fall of 2023. So with the 461 bond-funded units underway or proposed, in addition to at least 300 affordable units slated for Hillside Park, the Housing Authority is looking to the first half of next year to release our second bond solicitation, so our second NOFA, with the goal of awarding funds to aid the development of 100 to 150 units. And this will bring us beyond our bond production goal of 812 units.
So those additional 150 units, have you been able to identify land or acquisition?
We're working with Metro right now on an acquisition in Lake Oswego, the Boone's Ferry project. So that's one that we've identified. We have a few other projects that I can go into here that we've supported so far with rental assistance vouchers. The Merrillhurst University campus, they're looking to develop 100 units of affordable housing there. Also a 60-unit project in Malala, which is sponsored by Greenlight and Home First Development.
Where would that be located in Malala?
It is at 1000 West Main Street. And it's 60 units, 2 and 3 bedrooms, 30 of each. So other than that, we haven't identified land, but typically we'll release our solicitation and give notice to developers that it's forthcoming, and they'll propose land.
So you say you identify a property in Moala, and this is the Metro bond?
That is outside of the
Oh, I was going to
UGB,
say.
yeah.
That was outside the UGB, right? Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, on that lower table there, where you have the Webster, Fuller, Maple, and Good Shepherd.
What page are you on?
I'm not sure I'm on a page, I'm looking at on my screen here, so I'm not sure there's a page number.
4 or 5?
It's the one at the very top, 6 of 8 is what's on my slide,
got
or on my PDF here, or whatever it is. But, so, the Webster Road project, that's a housing authority-owned project. The remainder, my question is, those are, I guess, private development ownership, public bonds, government funds, build those. Remind me what the period of those guaranteed. There's a term of time, and after that time, they become open. I mean, what is the termination? My question is, where I'm going is, these are public dollars building them. Once that time period expires, do they still go into public hands? Is there a buyout, basically? Or really, is it just, we just buying those public dollars a certain amount of time of affordable housing?
Well, the projects using Metro bonds are deed restricted for 60 years. And then typically, with the nonprofit developers, which all but 2 of them are, and then Community Development Partners has a very good reputation for maintaining affordability over time. It's in their best interest. I mean, they typically refinance, after 20 years, in which case that affordability period is extended an additional 60 years. So they kind of go through that process. And for example, Webster Road or projects where we have the Housing Authority has direct funding in, we are given the right of first refusal to purchase the property after the tax credit compliance period. And typically that's something that we would opt to do.
Okay, so all of these with the Metro bond in that table, Fuller, Maple, Good Shepherd, all of those are all affordable housing. The entire complex is affordable. It's locked in. My concern, I'm raising this is, just getting this on the record, is that the PEDCOR, one thing I had a little bit of reservation with, it wasn't very clear that would be locked in. There was a transition plan that was never followed through on. Now you're not just bringing that up, that's something that I want to make sure when we build this stuff and we do it, we're following through what the board's initiatives were and what the board was told. And that's one thing that didn't really happen completely with PEDCOR. It's a great project. Oh, by the way, for 2 weeks now, someone's been telling me that when they finish the roof on the PEDCOR project, off the side of the freeway, and I confirmed it on Saturday when I drove by, the roof's complete, but they left roof shingles up on top of the roof, and you can see it from I-205.
Okay.
There's probably a third of a square of
Okay.
shingles, or maybe 2/3 of a square of shingles left on the roof.
Okay.
Might want to get those down before they land on someone.
That's a good idea. I'll reach out to the developer. He's a very nice person.
Paul, can I ask you, because I came in as a commissioner in the middle of PEDCOR, and I don't know what you're talking about. Like, there's a transition plan that wasn't followed through on, and
Yep. Well, the plan was that when we were looking at the, what's the site in Oregon City, the Oregon City Manor and the other
Like
one.
sites.
Right.
that they would move in there.
We would relocate them. That was what the PEDCOR was, and that was the ability to start doing the transitioning.
Okay, now I know what you're talking
And
about.
that was why the property tax break came in,
Right.
right? That was part of the whole formula. And also that there be a certain number of affordable units. I don't know what that ever turned out to be, but
They're all affordable
Okay.
at PECCOR. And we have subsequently required that any project funded with affordable housing bonds prioritizes folks relocating out of public housing. So that we hope to have a lot of these units online when we are relocating folks out of public housing as we reposition.
during the ice storm, when all 5 of us were at, was that Clackamas Heights, when we were out there, it's a reminder of some of that very tired housing.
Very
Yes,
tired.
it is.
Without air conditioning.
Right.
Yes.
Without the best of,
A lot
yeah.
of things.
It's, yeah, lots of things. So it's just a sad reminder that they were not really, had that opportunity to move up.
Question. Devin, on the projects you just briefed, how many, some of them are rebuilds, some of them are new, right? Now, how many units on what you just briefed will contribute to meeting the Performance Clackamas County Plan, ensure safe, healthy, and secure communities by 2025, 1,500 affordable housing units? How many?
I believe all of them will.
So this is a total of how many units? You don't need to add them up right now, but I just want to know of these projects, how many units are actually going to count towards this 1,500 unit goal?
I recently totaled the 800 that are associated to H3S, which are the, 60% AMI and below, and we already have identified over 800 that are in some stage of development, pre-development, planning, or under construction.
By 2025?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see if I had any other.
Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chair Smith. I am really interested in the other developments that you mentioned at Merrillhurst, Boones Ferry, and then Malala. I was just Googling a little bit, and Pamplin just did an article about what's happening over at Merrillhurst, and it looks pretty exciting. I'm just curious, what is our role as the housing authority with that? How do we interact with that, those processes when other jurisdictions, I see that Lake Oswego did changes to their code, or I guess it would be their code, just to allow, or their, whatever their plan,
Yeah, their amendment, their land use amendment.
their land use plan. What do we do in a situation like that? How do we support that kind of housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. For this particular instance, we provided 30 units with the supportive housing services rental assistance and services funding. And so that allowed them to, in part, I think it allowed them to become more competitive for their LIFT funding application through the state.
And that's the
they were
low-income
awarded.
tax credit funding, or what is that?
That's another program offered through the state, which they would then pair as part of their capital stack to go after the 4% non-competitive low-income housing tax credit.
What is LIFT?
LIFT, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's a pot of funds that is offered through the state.
Yeah.
It's competitively awarded. I'm not even sure what the source is, but I know you have to go through an application process. And they recently announced all the folks that were awarded, I guess in June. So I can get you more information about the program specifically, but it's a state program that offers capital funding.
Yeah, I'm interested in what these other developments are and what our role is. I mean, you said the rental assistance for the Merrillhurst, but the other one at Boones Ferry and then Malala?
Yeah, and then the Boones Ferry project, so we have, I think, 12 million set aside as part of the Metro Affordable Housing Bond for acquisitions, and the Metro acquisitions team is kind of running this process. So they've been working with us and the city of Lake Oswego to, go through the land use process on this site on Boones Ferry. And so we will likely end up purchasing the property with those earmarked funds and then also supporting a portion of the capital development with those $12 million, which is kind of outside of this allocation that you see, the $160 million in bond funds.
Oh, so it'll be in addition to that? Mm-hmm. Oh, and how are those funds allocated? Is that just extra money within the bond proceeds?
Yeah, and Essentially, I mean, it was part of the local implementation plan, but Metro's been kind of overseeing those funds with their acquisition team. So they had the goal of identifying 1 to 2 sites to purchase by Metro, and then they would, deed the property over to the developer at closing. And then the Malala project, I think it was 8 VASH vouchers that we committed to that project, so rental assistance. And again, that also kind of gave them the leg up in their lift application, and they were awarded.
And BASH is veterans
Yes,
vouchers.
yes, yep, exactly.
Very nice.
Yeah, making lots of progress. Great job.
Do you need to continue?
So I believe that is
Martha had her
everything.
card up.
Oh, Martha, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I had a good conversation with Joe Buck the other day, who mentioned this piece of property.
Would you speak into
Which
your
one?
Who mentioned this piece of property in Lake Oswego.
Boone's Ferry, yeah.
Boone's Ferry. And one of the things he mentioned is that our gap with the cities is they don't, you come and you brief us all the time, and we kind of have a handle on what all this means and how you have to leverage things. And one of the things they suggested, and I was going to make this a C4 suggestion, is that we do a housing 101 with our housing authority, with our cities, because they oftentimes don't have the same level of staffing. And Lake Oswego does. They're our biggest city. But some of these cities, if they knew that they could be leveraging some of these funds and you could give them some case studies, would be more on board on actually looking in their own municipalities to do this kind of work. I know Estacada is interested,
Right.
as well. There's a land up there that I think would be possible. So I don't know if that's something we want to plan for the future with our cities as a housing 101 with our housing authority piece. Because what you just described, we get it all the time.
Yeah.
I've heard all of this numerous times, and
Yes.
I know you gotta leverage, and you gotta use Lyft, and who's doing state and how. But a lot of times, like Joe said, even after working with you guys now, they don't have the breadth of knowledge or the expertise in their staff to really be able to do this. And that's what they need. That's what our job is, So I think we should talk to Jill about that. Maybe
Commissioner Fisher?
pull something together.
Yeah, Commissioner Schroeder, really like that idea. I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, but the board participated in a C4 event where we had all these little cards of all the different ways the city jurisdictions can be involved with creating more affordable housing. It was a really great
We need to redo it.
baseline for this continued conversation. And that the C4 was really involved when we did our assessment of looking across all the jurisdictions to what the need is for housing affordability, great partnerships there.
And a lot of
It's a
new
great,
mayors,
it's a really good
too.
forum to have those conversations. So that's great that the mayor suggested that. I'm not sure how that gets on the agenda.
Well, it would
Commissioner
happen-
Chavez, you're our,
Sure, yeah, so at C4, Martha knows this, at C4, we plan the retreat months and months in
Right.
advance, and we talk about agenda items that we want to talk about, and we do, basically, they do polling, and they rank the top 5 or whatever, and then we simulate all that, Gary knows this too, and then we figure out what the hottest ones are. So there's a whole bunch of high-level, housing's one of them. We did the housing needs analysis with the entire C4 membership pretty much participating. And so we have that, we have transit, we have transportation issues. There's a list of things that they want to do, talk about. So, we've got 2 days carved out up on the mountain, it looks like. And so we'll be seeing how that conversation goes as far as hammering down what they want to talk about. But
When is it going to
it's
be?
membership driven,
when's the retreat?
September, October. I think it's
Okay.
October.
All right.
Okay.
Any further information?
And that's all for today.
Any other questions or comments on this topic? Thank you very much. Very informative.
Updates appreciated.
Yes, absolutely.
Glad the Webster project's finally moving.
Oh, no kidding.
I know the mayor is happy about that too.
Yeah.
Okay, Gary, who's up?
All right, thank you, Devin. Next, if we could go back to the issues list, because you have 30 minutes before the next scheduled policy session. Quickly, advisory boards and commission appointments. Christina, could you please lead that?
Yes, we have two ABCs today. The Budget Committee has one opening due to term expirations, and they are allowed 3-year terms. 7 applications were received, and 1 is recommended for appointment. That will be Jan Lee, and would be her second term. The second ABC is for the Tourism Department Council. They have 3 openings due to term expirations. 5 applications were received, and 2 were recommended to be appointed. First is David Pendleton for its second term, and then Gail Yazlino for their first term. And those are your 2 items.
Move for approval?
Second.
Commissioner Savas has moved for approval for the appointment of the ABCs, seconded by Commissioner Fisher. Is there any comments or discussion on these?
I'd just say
Yes.
that Commissioner Smith and I interviewed everyone, and I think Jan Lee had a substantial amount of public budgeting, and I think she stood, that was substantial in our decision-making, and so we appreciate her being on board. I think we had some great interviewees,
We did.
actually, and if we could encourage them for other recruitments in the future, that'd be great. I was really pleased with the outcome. How about you, Tuti?
Well, I thought the same thing. It's really interesting to talk to these people and listen to the community members, about their perceptions, and all of them just couldn't wait to volunteer at Clackamas County. I was so pleased by that. We had some really good conversations with Jan Lee, who we decided to reappoint, very frank, open discussions, and I was very pleased with her. I look forward to working with her again for the next 3 years on the Budget Committee. Any other comments? Thank you, Paul. Seeing none. Christina, please call the poll.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Gary, thank you.
Thank you. Next, your business meeting this Thursday, August 5th, 2021, at 10 a.m. You have 4 public hearings, all related to annexations around the Clackamas County Service District Number 1 and/or the Tri-City Service District, and a lengthy consent agenda. That's it. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know, and we'll get those answered for you. Next, Chair Smith would like to discuss economic impact to agricultural industry due to high heat.
Thank you, Gary. I've been traveling around the county, and I have documented through photographs and discussions with farmers the impact to our agricultural crops based on weather events. And I started doing this, well, of course, we had the wildfires. That had some impact, for instance, on the hazelnuts crops, because the ash fell, that was September. Ash fell on the ground, and you cannot harvest your nuts that are laying on the ground with all the ash in it. It's just not feasible. You can't take them in to be sold because they're not of a good product. And then the rains came and washed away the ash, and it washed away the nuts as well. That's why you don't harvest nuts in the rain. And so yields were down for that. That's one thing, okay. Then we move forward to the ice storm, and I had intended to bring pictures forward and I can do that at a later date. And I have pictures of hazelnuts where when the February ice storm hit, February is a typical time for hazelnuts to bloom, and they put in their pollination period, and they're called catkins. And some of our hazelnuts are in the catkin form, and they're a long beard that appear on the hazelnut tree. Additionally, some buds had formed. And so you take a stick the size of my finger, for instance, where the buds are, and imagine it encased in a perfectly cylinder, inch-thick ice. And you don't know what that's going to do to the bud moving forward. Some of our hazelnut community folks lost their entire crops because of the weight of the ice broke the trees down. And we have areas that have been totally devastated. And it's based on age and variety. I have a really good friend who's lost probably 100 acres of a 50-year-old hazelnut farm that his father started, generational. My hazelnut farm, for instance, is not that old, full disclosure. I do have an interest in agriculture. I'm a 4th-generation Clackamas County farmer. I'm somewhat proud of that, and half the time I'm thinking, why in earth am I doing this? So our hazelnuts are younger. They're of a different variety, a different genetic makeup, and they were able to bounce back because at my house, the thaw started in Saturday afternoon, so it started to melt, and so my trees were laying over. I thought we had total devastation. We lost about 10% of our orchard, and some of them were able to pop up, which is fine. But there was a lot of devastation on at least hazelnuts for that. Then you're thinking, okay, we've pruned our orchards, we're ready to go, and then what happens is the heat situation. And at my house, we had recorded temperatures of 120 degrees, and a lot of it was in the 1-teens. We had hazelnuts, we had the wind that came in and scorched our hazelnut trees, and we're thinking, okay, the nuts are going to be okay. You know, we probably could weather this. The problem in some areas, immediately following the high temperatures on the hazelnuts, we had an east wind come. And the east wind dropped prematurely a lot of the hazelnuts on the floor of the field where you come along and sweep up your hazelnuts. Those hazelnuts cannot be left on the floor because you're cold and you're docked at the cannery, and Martha could probably understand how this works. So many of our folks who had trees remaining went through and swept up the bad hazelnuts and put them out there. The problem with that is you never drive your tractor down the roads at this time of the year because the trees are out this way. Your tractor is so large, you ended up knocking off the good hazelnuts on the ground, and therefore you have sacrificed more of your crop. So if they were able to make it through the ice storm, we had the heat and then the winds following has done a lot of damage to our hazelnuts. And it's really disastrous, hugely disastrous. Also, you look at the Christmas trees. This heat event came on right on the noble firs when the noble firs are budding out in their most tender form. And you all have seen green fields have literally turned to red. And the Christmas trees that were worst affected were the noble fir, the grand fir, and the northern fir. Those are considered true firs. The Doug fir, not so much, although if you drive through the county, you will see timber trees that are scorched. We had some Doug fir scorched, but we have entire fields that the green has turned to red. They are so scorched without any protection, without any, what are these farmers are going to do? I talked to one farmer alone on Holiday Tree Farms, and he estimated that his fields was a total loss of just $3 million this year. And for your reference, it takes probably 8 years for a noble tree to grow to a height of 6 feet to be harvested. You have the costs, the labor costs that you expend every year in hopes that you could sell your tree. Also, we've had our nursery stock, a lot of our nursery stock, our greenhouses. Why, Oregon, you know, what we do with our greenhouses, we worry about heat in the winter. Well, this time, there was so much heat in them, they had to run fans, and a lot of that shriveled up. A lot of our food production is shriveled up. We've had some livestock. I know of instances where pigs and chickens have died. It was totally unavoidable. So I talked to the governor, and Nancy Bush has educated me on how agricultural declarations work. And it's a hard process. We basically have to wait for the U.S. Department of Agriculture to, recognize us out here in Oregon. And so I talked to the governor. I says, Governor, what can you do to help us out there? And she was just spot on, I have to say. She was just spot on. She says, Tootie, I have been engaged with the agricultural community, and yes, we are on this. I have been in contact with the U.S. Department of Ag head Thomas Vilsack, and we're trying to educate them and Congress to understand in Oregon we don't have corn or wheat or soy farms. We have specialty commodity crops is what the national considers us to be before we can get a designation. I says, fine. Okay, what is it that we can do to help you in your efforts on education? You know, we're the feet on the ground, right? You know, we live this stuff. And so I moved forward, and I had an appointment with Alexis Taylor. She is the governor's Oregon Department of Agriculture head. By the way, she used to work for Secretary Vilsack in Washington, D.C. She comes from an Iowa farming family, and her farms in Iowa are as old as America is. And guess what? She is now a Clackamas County resident. She understands this situation deeply. And we talked about the same thing. I says, okay, what can we do out here in Clackamas County? There's got to be some messaging. There's got to be some action that we can take to help you in your education efforts. He says, we have a national lobby team. And she says, well, right now, there's a bill in Congress to consider adding this designation of what we call specialty crops in Oregon. I said, okay, we have a national lobby team. Let's get in contact. None of the current Oregon delegation sits on the Agriculture Committee, but I believe there's a Washington State representative on there. I says, I'll get an appointment with them. We need to do this. We need to engage our national lobby firm, Summit Strategies, to help us with this designation for them to recognize what's happening out here. And this is a food situation. And the governor described it well. She says they need to understand it just wasn't one weather event. It was a mounting and compounding series of weather events that has weakened our crop production here in Oregon. And that's what we need to discuss. So as I'm driving around, I spent whatever day we had off engaging in our farmers and taking a lot of pictures, and which I'm going to use. And it came to me, well, why don't we as a county maybe be the first in the county to have a declaration on economic agricultural damages. And we move forward with this, knowing that the governor probably cannot adopt it the way she would normally. But we can take this designation, go to our federal congressional people, go to Secretary Vilsack, present it to the governor. This is the action that we have taken, recognizing that we have had significant agricultural damage to crops and livestock. So that's what I'm asking this board. Previously, last January, we adopted farming and food production as one of our goals. I think this is in keeping with this. So I'm going to quit talking and listen to the comments of my fellow commissioners on this.
2 thumbs up. Let's do it.
Sounds like you got it pretty well figured out, Tootie. I would probably say that, I don't know what was damaged during, well, you already mentioned it, the wildfires, the ice storm, the heat, 3 events that
Right.
in totality had an impact to all those industries. And I don't think people realize that Clackamas County, they think of it as an urban county, some, right?
Some do, yes.
Don't have no idea that we have so much ag,
And Paul, it's a good point, and the reason I want to do this is bring attention to our great agricultural community. And I've been talking with Stephen Madcorn, maybe you have, and Stephen had some suggestions how to go about this properly.
I'll work on a resolution for you, Chair, that I can present to the board. I was just waiting to see if there was going to be at least 3 support for it, and I've been doing some research, and it's
Thank
pretty
you.
impressive what I'm finding about agriculture in Oregon.
Great. And there were words like the mounting and compounding effects of several weather events is a good one. Listing the commodities that I did. These commodities, but, including, but probably weren't, not, singly, and there may be others that I haven't thought about. I was talking with Catherine Harrington on our tri-chair's call, and we talked about the agriculture, and she says in her county, she says, oh my gosh, our Christmas trees have been wiped out and our nursery stock, and she says, Tootie, you have more nursery stock than we do. I says, I know, it's terrible. I'm working on a plan that I can present to you later. So it's quite possible we could get Washington County to join in our efforts to bring attention to this problem and just say, hey, this is a community of farmers, and if you know farmers, they don't ask for help. In fact, I sent my husband out probably 5 days after the ice storm. I says, would you please go out and take pictures for me? And he did. And by the time he got there, the farmers were already out in the fields with their chainsaws trying to trim up their trees and salvage what they had. They're not waiting for government assistance. They don't do that. It's just not in their genome to do that. So I think we do need to give attention to this, and I'm just praying and Lord willing that we don't have any more weather events, for a while, that we can start to catch up and do repair. I don't know what effect this is going to have, but I would like all of our commissioners to engage in some type of a lobby effort in bringing this attention. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, it was, when we went on our wildfire forestry tour, really devastating to see the Christmas trees.
And you and I and Mark were on that.
Yeah, really sad. They're just red. The new growth, you just see it, and it kind of breaks your heart. I would really be interested. We've done a lot of research. I don't know if we've done it recently, but on just the domestic, Thank you, Chair Smith. The revenue that the state receives, how that is part of our, not revenue for the state, but the county, the money for the industry and how much we're going to lose to our Clackamas County economy. I don't know if we can find that out.
Well, we can. There's the Northwest Christmas Tree Association we can reach out to.
So it's just all of the nursery stock and the lost crops
And there's associations that we can reach out to. And the problem with this crop situation is a lot of times you don't know until it comes time to harvest. For instance, the blueberry crops. I've been told 50% of the blueberries have been wiped out. I have a dozen blueberry plants that my husband does, and we were able to get some blueberries, but not what it could have been. So a lot of the berries were gone as well. And, that goes to the consumer's pocketbook, right? And it just raises prices, scarcity, and time. So, I'm thinking that if we could give some attention to this, it'd be a really good thing we can start working on.
The overall economic impact has been something I've been thinking about.
It is, and those numbers, I think they're not releasing yet. I think they're forthcoming. We may not know until the Christmas tree harvest, when people want to go to the store and buy a noble fir tree and realize that there either aren't any, or the ones that are there are like 10 times what they normally should be. So I told people, you might want to get used to a Doug fir this year.
One other thing I was just thinking about this whole time is that my guess is that Marion County, Yamhill County, Polk County, Lane County, Lynn County, with vineyards, with all the different crops.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're going to be harvesting pretty soon, too.
That's right.
Right? And they're going to see the impacts. Maybe they'll be good ones. I doubt it, but we'll see.
That's right. And so when we do this declaration, I would like us to reach out to the other counties, to their commissions, and say, this is what we did and why. And maybe you want to do something similar just to give it natural attention. Yeah, and going forward on it. I think the governor understands the situation well. I'm very happy with her designee, Alexis Taylor. They get it. And I think they're going to try to work hard on it. But let's help them help us. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
How quickly would you like this done, Chair Smith?
Well, we're going on break, and I know this is a heavy lift. And I told staff last week, time may be of the essence, because I do not want this agricultural declaration to be overshadowed by a possible forest fire one next month or in October. Whatever Stephen can do, whatever his staff can do, we will take it when it comes.
We're on it,
Thank you very much.
Can we do it in the next 2 weeks, Stephen?
of course.
We'll do it before your recess.
Okay, good. And if you could send out the draft language to my commissioners for them to read.
I'll assign it to Kathy immediately.
You didn't know you were a farmer, did you? You didn't know you were a farmer, did you?
Well, I am on the food implementation in the farm facility.
Very good, thank you. I appreciate it very much. Okay,
All right, very good. Last item is Commissioner Communications. You have about 10 minutes now, and then we can continue between other sessions later.
Is that really it?
For issues, you have 2 more policy sessions.
Right, I'm amazed. I was trying to find online our administrative issues, and it's like not there. And I'm like, dang it, how do I find it? Because it's past 10:30, so I'm really happy.
who wants to go first?
I can talk a little bit about what you just talked about, because I just went to the NREC board meeting.
The what?
The North Willamette.
Oh, yes.
Experiment Station, they're kind of our ag Yeah, they're our hub out here, and all the information we need, I would suspect, particularly on the blueberries, we did talk about it, that there has been some significant loss of the blueberry crops too. And you're right, we can get it all at the commodities, but it was a topic of discussion at the last board meeting. They were not successful in recruiting a new executive director. They're going to do another search. Mike Bondi is still on board as the executive interim until they can finally find someone who they believe is. And we had the dean of the College of Agriculture there talking to us as well. So I think this is going to really dovetail nicely into your initiative of having this pulled together. One of the things that we do for them is that we own that land. And we basically give it to them and they're doing significant restoration of buildings there and upkeep. So that was kind of my big meeting last week. It was nice to do that. Really enjoyed those folks. And we used to have a real component here if I can do some institutional memory, we actually had a real, in our economic development, a significant ag component. And rural, we actually had, she left, I can't remember her name, but she was from Canby. But she was our rural outreach director for economic development for all of our rural communities.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I think you know, right? She went to Woodburn. Yeah, she went to Woodburn.
Yes.
Yeah, and in that included this whole notion of agriculture and commodities and exporting as well. So it'd be nice if we could, I don't know where, I think that department's pretty thin right now, but.
Jamie Junk?
Jamie Junk.
Yep.
That's who it was.
I remember her.
And we
Yeah, really
did,
enjoyed
not
it.
only did we do agricultural commodities work, but we also did Main Street programs through
Yes.
her too for downtown economic
And I
development.
think that's what her job ended up being, as a director.
Pretty
of the
much,
Main
yeah.
Street program.
So it'd be nice if we could take a look at that
Absolutely.
again. And Extension is continually very anxious to continue working with us. We're one of their favorites out here. So.
And to piggyback on that, our PGA staff is really kind of excited about that because they've been looking at our overall portfolio, and they have come up with, we need to do something more for rural Clackamas County. Our focus has been
Yeah.
on all these other situations. So I think they're going to be pretty excited about
Okay.
lifting this ball for us and reaching out to where we need to go.
Okay.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you.
Great. So that's it for me.
All right, Mark, you have something you want to say?
Yes, I just want to make sure you all saw the letter from the Vietnam War Memorial Fund signed by President Steve Bates. In it is a folder with information on the design of the proposed memorial. And he writes about their fund drive. And I just want to make sure you all saw this. If you haven't seen it, I'll pass it around to you. That's all I have.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I did get that too, and I want to thank you for bringing that forward. Paul?
Well, I was gone most of last week. Thank you for passing the letter on, or approving the letter to the Oak Grove Community Council and the Jennings, all those folks,
Oh.
the Mappet Group. So I was asked by the chamber 3 weeks ago to speak and give an update on the Park Avenue project, and that was on Monday. So I referenced the letter that you all sent, and encourage them to get to the table. We have heard multiple times from the Jennings Lodge CPO, which is one member of Mappet. We've heard many times recently from MABA, the business group, that they are anxious to get back together. And we're not hearing much in the way of Oak Grove Community Council moving forward as of yet. So hopefully they get to that point. They mentioned they were going to go on hiatus until August, well, that could be sometime in August, so we hope that they can move that on. I think there's a lot of concern that if they don't, then what's next? And, in speaking to Dan Johnson from DTD and Gary Schmidt, who knows, we put years of effort, Commissioner, dating back to when you were, Chair Smith, when you were on the commission, we put a lot of effort, street lighting, we've done a lot of great work, so we need that voice. We need a group that is, that comes to the table, can represent, all those different diverse opinions and so forth. And we hope that they can come back together. If not, then maybe we need to look at a different group. If they, we just can't have a lack of a voice in that regard. We just got to have that willingness to, come to the table and work those things out. And so we're just hoping that happens.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, so last week I was part of and I wish I knew what this acronym stood for. It's the NARO training. It's for board members of housing authorities. And it was really interesting because they had commissioners or board members from around the country. Ann Leenstra was also part of the training. It was pretty extensive. It was 3 to 4 hours, 4 days of last week. And I really learned a lot. There were times when Ann and I were texting back and forth, and it's like, Ann, do you know what our da-da-da-da-da is? And she's like, no, I don't know what our da-da-da-da-da is. And we'd get all our questions together, and I'm hoping to just get together with her and kind of debrief everything that we learned.
Great.
There is so much about housing and how we deal with the federal government and what all the requirements are. And one thing that really struck me is like, wow, we get evaluated a lot. And because we do such a good job, we don't get evaluated as much as some housing authorities because we've been in really good shape. And that was a real takeaway. But it was a lot of learning, and I really encourage the commissioners to do that. We have a huge responsibility as the board of our housing authorities, and to really dig in and understand all the different aspects of what our housing authorities do. And I can't say that I'm by any means an expert. I am happy that I have some materials to review because it's pretty extensive. So there was that. I was happy I was listened to. I don't participate, but I listen, sort of a fly on the wall on our Continuum of Care group, which is our different housing providers, and they have a gathering on Wednesday, end of the month, and I'm always impressed with how on the grassroots, the ground, there's just this coordination. And one thing that I was listening to, I was happy that the heat event didn't materialize the way that the weather forecasted. But they were really coordinated, and they shared information, and they knew where they had talked about that, and that really gave me a lot of assurances, because we never really know if the decisions that we make here, how that translates to our provider. So it was nice just to hear about all of that. Like we had talked about, and I mentioned briefly today, I was reaching out to different folks about potential bridge financing for the homeless services measure. Had a couple really wonderful conversations. One with Max Williams for the Oregon Community Foundation, really insightful and helpful, wonderful to partner and have these conversations, because it's so nice to see the camaraderie and shared interests of different stakeholders. I also talked with Ian, I'm going to get his last name, Galloway, who's with the Federal Reserve. And what a resource he is on different ways of public-private partnership and different ways of doing things. I engaged in a conversation with him that is so much the way we think as a board, but it's the concept of benefiting private industry, potentially private, when there are cost savings for government. So it's almost like if private invests in somewhat of government programs and there's a cost savings, then they might get a dividend. It's kind of how I thought about it, but if you look at things like public safety and different things that end up costing us so much in public expenditures, if there are different ways of, if it's alcohol and drug treatment, or if it's different ways to reduce and prevent, it's this whole concept. And he just emailed me today, just sort of the ideas of it. So I hadn't ever thought of this before. The ideas of investment in public good, creating a financial incentive or a dividend for private business. Am I not making any sense, Chair Smith?
I didn't follow that.
I know,
tried.
I'm sorry, I will learn more, I'll read some materials and
Why don't you,
it's just an interesting.
write up a couple paragraphs for us
Sure.
to read?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fine, and then we'll figure out, we'll track that and figure that out. Yeah, I think that the housing situation for the homeless is always something that we can learn more about and figure out more resources.
Yeah, so the takeaway so far, I have not connected with Meyer Memorial yet, but the takeaway I've had from my various conversations is the resources for 2021 have been mostly allocated.
Sure.
And not probably a possibility for them to bridge funds. So I'm happy about moving forward with looking at more of the opportunity for Metro. So I think that is very timely after that research.
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner.
And I would love to hear what Commissioner Schrader's found out with talking with the mayors as well.
Well, they don't have any money, but I'm still talking to them. I'm trying to get them to give us ARPA dollars. It's like, you have ARPA dollars you want to give to this. Yeah, I've been talking to them individually. I'm having coffee with Jules. I just talked to Joe Buck. I'm just kind of going to each one of them, just asking.
I'm reporting back on an action that this board wanted me to take, and that is talking with the mayors of the Stafford Triangle regarding the letter that they sent to us, wanting us to have our planning department send them an emails when the application has been made. And I was just frank and says, hey, look, this is what the board wants. What are you guys up to? What's going on? What's the underlying conditions? And da-da-da. And I says, when it comes to the Stafford Triangle project, I have PTSD over it. By the way, we're not going to go in. We're not going to do anything for you. It kind of put them at ease. We talked about it frankly. And the letter was really originated from Tualatin Mayor on a project that you may be familiar with, Athey Creek School. Applied and built a storage shed next to the Willamette River. Some folks from the Borland Property Owners Association objected to that. They thought that the Athey Creek School should not have built the storage shed in the location that they built it in. And they wanted to know why did Frank allow that? Well, Frank didn't allow that. And so he said, can you just send us? I says, yes, we will have our planning department do that. We had much discussion from this board, but I think it really settled the tensions. And what I learned from this meeting, all three mayors are really being hit by the community activists in the area for no planning. For no planning. And they seem to be organized, and they field calls daily.
Is this from the Hamlet?
Borland
Or the
Association, Stafford, all the
Okay,
little
little-
hamlets, any little associate, it's everybody out there,
Everybody.
from what I
Okay.
understand. And so with that in mind, says, yes, we will do that. Clackamas County is your partner. We do not take the lead on this, but I will say this, I'm just going to put my little plug in. Failure to plan your area is not planning. And that's what your charge was to do, is to plan something. I understand it's very expensive to do that. However,
Out there, yeah.
yes, however, we want to make sure we have our affordable housing for future generations, and this is all about future generations. Affordable housing, our park space, our agriculture community, so we can feed ourselves. And I understand transportation is a big deal with you, and that's why you're hesitant to go forward. I talked about the whole transportation issue, what we're doing to go forward to support them, what the results of the Oregon legislation is, what hopeful results, federal monies were coming in. We talked about tolling, we talked about displacement, diversion, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're okay. And like Gary says, he'll instruct the planning staff to send them an email. And it was really no big deal to them. I think they enjoyed the conversation. I do. So they're looking at us as their partner, and we're not the big gorilla in the room by any means on this issue. That's all I have.
I'm sorry, I was stepped out. They who? followed most of it, but they are.
The Stafford mayors
Oh, okay.
of the three cities of West Lynn,
So it's
Lake
Jules,
Oswego,
it's
and
Jules,
Tualatin,
Joe,
the
yeah.
letter, and I circled back around, and they get, almost daily, they get people telling them not to develop, don't do anything, and it stemmed from the Athy Creek School storage shed that was built too close to the river. And that was a long time ago, wasn't it? Or, I mean, when in the process, I don't even know what process that was.
They might have just built it. I don't know.
Yeah, they applied at the county
Oh, they did?
evidently.
Okay.
The school district went through everything, but there were some people who got grouchy over there and decided that the storage shed was too close to the Willamette River, and they didn't like it. So, there you have it. I think we're okay.
Was that the call that I was getting SOSs from Joe Buck for the Zoom link and that I text you?
Yes. Yes.
It's like, okay, I'm glad we got that worked out. Thank you so much for getting right back to
Oh,
me.
and thank you for doing that, on that. We had this meeting set up on a different day, then we had to change it, and somehow the Zoom link didn't get changed to the proper day. You know, that happens. That happens. And that's all I have, Gary.
All right, that's the end of the issues list. We'll now go to your next policy session, property disposition surplus property recommendation. We have staff from Business and Community Services and County Council to present. You did receive an updated staff report earlier this afternoon that has photographs. So
By
please,
doing it
Oh,
by
is it-
email?
Is
it's
it,
in your
Yeah,
email.
it's from Kimberly.
Christina, do you know if it was posted online?
Let me check.
I'm not sure if it was posted online. I apologize. We just got this in the last few hours. But with that, Kathy and Sarah, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Hello again. Kathleen Rastetter from County Council, and I'm with Sarah Ekman, Interim Director of Business and Community Services. We come before you every year with foreclosed properties that, as the worksheet sets out, when we foreclose on property, we then take the deed, and after the 6 years of the foreclosure process, we then transfer those properties to Business and Community Services Property Resource Division to dispose of. And the board has previously had procedures that BCS Property uses to dispose of the property, but in essence, what it does is tries to get the best value for the property based on appraisal values. So I believe there's 6 properties here today. Sarah is going to talk about them individually. And we sent you the photographs because some of them are improved and some of them are not, so.
Great, thank you. As Kathleen said, Sarah Ekman, Interim Director of Business and Community Services. The worksheet does line out, there's 5 items on the list. 2 out of the 5 are improved properties, which do have homes on them. The other 3 are unimproved, small parcels that we have had in our inventory and are looking to surplus so that they can be sold via our process, which is first to go to auction, and if not sold at auction, then sold via private sale. The 2 parcels that have improvements on them, one is in Milwaukee on Sun Meadow Drive. This home is empty. The work was done to remove all of the items from it. It was an extensive amount of work, multiple dumpsters to empty this house.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're going to put them on the screen, Commissioner, so you can actually see it right here in the room.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So this home is now empty. It is something that we have had an appraisal on, and in your packet, you'll see the appraisal is something that would need to be redone. The assessor's real market value is $315,000. This home is not in tip-top shape and definitely would need to have significant work done. However, it is viable as an improvement. The other improved parcel is in Gladstone on Manor Drive. This property will require extensive work, and it's estimated at more than $85,000 to empty it due to hazardous materials that are present on the property and a lot of belongings that were left behind by the former owner. This property we're recommending be sold as is so that a buyer could decide what they wanted to do with it and take care of that, so the price at that point would be discounted. The other 3, as I mentioned, are smaller. So there's one Mountain Air Drive in Welches. This is 0.05 acres. It is unimproved. It is within a distant suburban neighborhood, and there's a uninhabitable structure on the land that was built in the 20s. So that is listed for you. There's also a .55 acre parcel off East Multnomah Avenue and Highway 26 that is unimproved. It does have some building constraints. And there's one in Oregon City that is unimproved, that is .15 acres. These make up the 5 parcels that we have for you. We have attached some photographs from CMAP that provide the aerial view so that you can see the unimproved parcels, how they sit as.
What are we looking at now?
Can you do them one at a time, please, Sarah?
Yes, so let's see, can you go back, these, let's see, okay, these will be in order here. So this one is Sun Meadow Drive, you can see it's in a residential area. This is in Milwaukee, and this is the home that is empty, and the work has been done to remediate any issues. The next one, right here, this is Manor Drive. As I say, this is out of order a little bit. So Manor Drive is item number 5 on your list. This is the home I mentioned. We have done a reduced redemption hearing on this home, and there's extensive work, upwards close to $100,000 worth of work that would need to be done to empty it. The vegetation on the property is significantly overgrown. Just accessing the property is difficult, and it's been a longstanding problem in the neighborhood. So given the extensive costs, we believe it would be best to sell this as is and allow somebody to come in and do that work.
And I would just like to add, this particular property was abandoned for several years. So that's why we did the accelerated hearing on it. But it had been just left and trashed, and it's overgrown. But someone will buy it. It's in a nice neighborhood, and they'll develop it.
Great.
But that's why the recommendation is as is. It was left abandoned for years.
It has been.
Thank
Yes.
you.
It's had quite a bit of activity take place there. Here is the Oregon City property. This is item number, let me get back there. 4. Thank you. The .15 acres off of 6th Street. This is one of the unimproved parcels. As you can see, it is in the neighborhood, and it is near, my piece is cut off, county housing. So there's some values there. The next property is the 11th Street in Oregon City. It's right at the end of my piece here.
So this is unincorporated,
This is within,
city limits, both
This-
in Milwaukee and these 2 Oregon cities. It's because of the property tax situations why it's landed in our laps.
correct. I would need to double check the Milwaukee piece.
The Milwaukee one's
It was
off.
97267. so I think
It's off of Oatfield, it's unincorporated.
It's unincorporated, yes.
Unincorporated, okay.
But the Oregon City is within, yes. So this Oregon City one is on 11th. I'm scanning here. And, sorry, I'm not seeing the exact address. Perhaps this one was added by mistake. Christina, could you please go to the next one? And then here is the piece, I believe this is the, on the mountain, I need to look at the number here, 4,400.
That should be item 3.
Yes, so this is item number 3, which is just over half an acre off East Multnomah Avenue and Highway 26, also unimproved. We did run this list past Health, Housing, and Human Services so that their staff could look and see if there was anything that would be helpful to their programs, and they said there was not. They declined to engage on any property transfers.
Thank you very much. Is that it?
Yeah, I think we're just asking for the approval to go forward with the sale and disposal of these
I will
properties.
accept any further discussion and approval of the options, which is
Chair
option
Smith, I move that we accept option 1. Approve the proposed property list as dedicated surplus to be offered for sale at a future auction or private sale.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. I have a question.
Sure, we can open up for questions. A motion has been made by Commissioner Fisher, seconded by Commissioner Savas to accept the property disposition. Paul?
Yep. So my question is, has there been any, I won't say remonstrance, but any issues with any of these properties at this point? Or any, I mean, I think that what we typically found when we do this on an annual basis is, want to validate that before we take an action like this, which kind of like finalizes the disposition of the property, that we've done everything in our powers and get a sense if there's any other remaining issues or challenges.
When there are homes on these properties, before we finalize any foreclosure, if there are still remaining owners, we bend over backwards to try and work with them to keep them in their homes. So we have gone the 5 or 6 years and then still allowed an owner to redeem if they come forward and want to do that. That has not happened in these cases. As I said, with Manor Drive, it was abandoned for
Right.
literally 10 or 15 years.
So these aren't really even habitable in their current condition?
They are not.
Yeah.
Not those two homes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ron.
What involvement do the banks have in these cases?
If we notify, during the foreclosure process by statute, we're required to notify all people that hold a interest in the property, and that would include a mortgage, a bank, any other kind of mortgage on the property. If a bank has a mortgage, they usually come forward and redeem. That's, and that's everyone's preference anyway. That just didn't happen with these two properties. I don't think there was one on the Manor home, because I had done that foreclosure hearing, so I don't know about the Sun Meadow, but the banks almost always come forward if they want to.
Great. Any other questions or comments for this? Martha, we've made a motion to approve the sale of the property.
I'm all right with it.
Great.
yeah. We've been
Christina,
doing
would you
this
please
lots.
call the poll?
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schreier?
Aye.
Commissioner Toll?
Aye.
Commissioner Zappa?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, is your team here? Do we need to wait?
I just texted Scott, he says he's on the way, we do have the sheriff's office here.
Okay, let's just take 5 minutes, and we'll come right back.
Oh, I could have waited.
We have now returned from our recess on this August 3rd, 2021. Gary, what's up?
Final policy session today is amendment to Chapter 8.03 of the County Code, secondhand dealer's license. You've had 3 public hearings about this, and you've deferred it until you could have further conversation at a policy session, which is today. We have staff from the Sheriff's Office and County Council to have a conversation with you, Lieutenant Chris Cate and Scott Seco. Please go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Scott Seco with the Office of County Council, here to talk about secondhand dealers, as Gary has already pointed out. Right now, based on the most recent direction from the board and in conferring with the Sheriff's Office, what is the proposal before you is to amend the secondhand dealer ordinance so that it clarifies that firearms are no longer regulated. Again, that's largely a housekeeping matter to be consistent with state law. Hopefully that suggestion is not terribly controversial at this point. The proposed change also clarifies that collection agencies can be utilized when secondhand dealers owe money to the county. Again, hopefully this is not a controversial portion of the proposed ordinance. The perhaps more controversial proposal is requiring secondhand dealers to take photographs. And initially it was going to be of all regulated items. However, in response to some concern expressed by some of the secondhand dealers in the community and through discussions between the Sheriff's Office and those dealers, the current proposal is that the photographs only be taken of precious metals, jewelry, watches, things of that nature things that don't have a serial number, things that are generally more difficult to identify. They don't have any other identifying marks. And so Lieutenant Cate is here certainly to answer questions about specifics, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
Commissioner Savas.
So I'm just gonna, I think I'm pretty close. I like what I see, so I just want to just get that out there. But I just have a question with the wording of number 4 there, the key word, the word new in front of transactions. What does that mean? I would, it's not to be retroactive, so is there a different meaning or purpose of using the word new in front of transactions?
Yes, Sergeant Wilson did a lot of work with our pawn dealers in the county to talk about that, because they have a lot of return customers that will do a pawn loan, so they're bringing in an item and then they'll get loaned money. A lot of times they'll pay that off or they'll renew the loan, and so instead of having to do a new transaction, get the item out of their safe, do the whole process all over again, it's not a new, it's an existing transaction that they already have, so that takes, it just makes it easier on the pawn shop, so that way they don't have to take the item out of the safe and then re-photograph it since it's been in their safe the whole time, and then do all the paperwork all over again.
Okay, so.
So they look at that as kind of a pre-existing transaction.
Okay.
Or renewal.
All right.
And we can come back, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Lieutenant Cate, the only objections to this amendment that I have heard have to do with paragraph 4, that is the photographs. And the reason behind, at least one of the gentlemen I talked to, was that this would only really affect shops in unincorporated Clackamas County, and shops in the cities or people doing business online would not have to comply with this. So my question is, if this amendment was approved minus paragraph 4, and at some time in the future, paragraph 4 be added, should it become more important, would that be something that you would consider to be satisfactory for today? Or is paragraph 4 very important for you to have in the amendment?
Yeah, it's important, and the benefit, I think, is that when we search for an item, the language that is used when an item's entered, it could be like a woman's diamond ring, or a yellow ring with a clear
Sir,
stone.
could you talk into the
Oh, I'm
microphone?
sorry.
Thank you. Just move the microphone closer. Thank you.
And so because of the it's a keyword search and not a search by a photograph. It's really difficult to, because it could be, like a size could be something that's, significant to note. With a photo, we can compare photos to the photo that a pawn shop would take, that would, say, be a potential victim's photograph. So we're comparing, a photo to a photo. And then also, if we have, say, the way that it is now with no photograph, say we get an item that's just a description, or we have a photograph, and then we're comparing a photograph to just a very generic description of just a, gold ring with 3 red stones or whatever, then we would go to the pawn shop because it's on hold, there's no photograph, and then we're having to do, they're having to get it out of their inventory, show us the item, and then go through it that way, potentially have the victim come down and look at it that way. Whereas if we think that that's it, we can even have the victim come to us, look at the photograph that's on file and leads online since they've already taken the photo, and we take all of that out of it. And we can also search by, say, a geographical area of the photographs in a certain date range, and then we're searching tons and tons of photographs in just a couple of minutes to compare a victim's photograph to a pawn shop's photograph of something. So instead of, like, oftentimes we might have a suspect, we search the suspect's name, and then we're able to see what items that suspect's pawned. And so it's a very narrow search versus doing this really broad search of comparing a photograph with a photograph.
And do you all know, just by way of context, that when the pawn shop, when the dealers are conducting these transactions, these photographs, as well as other information about the transaction, is uploaded to a system that then the sheriff's office has access to directly. So really what you're doing is cutting out this whole step of having to go in person to places, into the pawn shops, finding the items. It allows the sheriff's office really just to shortcut that process. They can have victims in the sheriff's office, they can look through the system, they can see the picture, yes, that's the ring, here's my photo of it, compare it, and then that really saves a lot of time and energy.
Okay. If this amendment is done with paragraph 4, do you think that having that in there, just the fact that if I'm a thief, I'm going to pawn something, just the fact that I know that this is going to happen might stop me from trying to pawn that item? I mean, is this going to result in less crime? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how we would gauge that necessarily. I mean, I think anytime that you're, I guess, bringing attention to something like that and you're already doing something that you're not supposed to be doing, it's one more thing that people are going to realize that could come back to them. But to be honest, I don't know that I could fairly answer. I mean, I could guess, but I don't think that I could fairly gauge that, I suppose.
Commissioner Fish, Schrader.
So having someone that's been victimized this way, I'm okay with 4, because it would have been a lot easier instead of being dragged down to a pawn shop and realizing that, yes, those things were mine, because this theft had been going on for a while. Normally, it's someone who you trust. And this was someone who was trusted, who had drug issues and was, and of course, I blame myself because probably these things should have been in a, if I had put them in a safe deposit box, but these are family heirlooms that were pretty significant, that should have gone to my daughters and my sons, and it's pretty much wiped out. And I really feel very strongly that the pawn shop owners, they have people on tape, they have the paperwork. I finally realized, but if we had had photographs, because this person went to multiple pawn shops, I think that I might have recovered more of I'll be honest with you, just from the personal. And they don't really seem to care that much. I mean, anybody can go in and pawn something and sign a name on a piece of paper and it's gone. In fact, this watch was recovered. This was one of the things that was taken. And so I've got a few things, but the bulk of our families, things that were supposed to go to kids is gone. So I'm a little bit more, that's when I said I feel like I'm a little jaded, no pun intended. Because, yeah, I don't think the pawn shops particularly care. If they get caught at it, they'll give it back. And they know who's been lifting stuff too, come on. I don't believe that they don't, you know. When you get people regularly coming in and pawning things, they don't ask. So, just saying. So I'm okay with that, but if the rest isn't, I can live with that, but.
I have, may I
Yeah,
ask
go
you
ahead,
one
go
more
ahead.
question?
Mark,
I have to ask this question. Mr. Steve Sousa from the All That Glitters. Now, if I have some stolen property to fence, and I know that in a shop that is in unincorporated Clackamas County, that my stuff's going to be photographed, okay? Then I'm just going to go a few miles down the road inside a city limits to a pawn shop and fence my stuff there, where the requirement is not, there's no requirement to photograph it. So that kind of bothers me. I mean, it could, now, if I was a pawn shop guy, I don't want to be taking in stolen property anyway. But wouldn't that have a result of reducing potential clients in my shop if they can go just 2 miles down the road inside of city limits and sell something? You know, I'm not going to know if something's stolen anyway. I mean, if it's brought into my shop, I take it in, I photograph it. I don't know if it's stolen or not, right?
Sure.
But I'm not going to even have a chance to do that if this change gets made. I'm not against this change. I'm saying if I was a pawn shop guy, how would this affect my business? Would this negatively affect businesses inside unincorporated Clackamas County? I have to ask that.
Yeah, my hope is that we would, I mean, it would affect their business some, because I'm hoping that by having this, we would recover more victims, you know, property. So consequently, they aren't going to necessarily be able, a pawn shop wouldn't be able to sell that later. So that would necessarily affect their business, I suppose. But I think that the greater good is going to be that somebody who didn't deserve to have their items stolen recovered. You know, and also one thing that, as you were talking about things, I thought that pawn shops have to hold items for 30 days. And so that after 30 days, they can put it out and sell it, or they can, you know, if it's gold, they can melt it down, and then the chances of identifying something would be, you know, impossible.
Yeah.
So the benefit of photos also gives us, you know, that window of time where they're having to hold it regardless, to
So you can
potentially go through
recover.
photographs and identify something. So that would be another benefit on our end of things, because it gives us more time to go through those. I know that other jurisdictions also have different requirements. I don't know what the city of Portland has versus the city of Salem. I know that there's some that are already photographing things in unincorporated Clackamas County. And I believe that's Stuff, so they already kind of operate this way. I guess an unintended benefit for the dealers is that, you know, they're going to be able to protect themselves by taking a photograph of something, so somebody can't come back later and say that they, you know, well, yeah, you said that this is a gold ring with a clear stone, and yet, you know, they'd come back in and say, well, no, this was a carat diamond, not a half carat. And with a photograph, at least they have that to protect themselves. Not that, I mean, I don't think our intention is to necessarily do that, you know, that benefit, but as I've been thinking about this, that would certainly be an unintended benefit for them. But certainly, selfishly, you know, I want to be able to, you know, take photographs, compare photographs, so we can see what we can maybe get back to victims.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, the one question I had is that, getting to those who melt down, gold or silver and so forth, and have signs up, we buy this or that, and, they're all around, they're in the not newspaper, but, saw somewhere in print where people advertise. Are those secondhand dealers? Are they required to be licensed?
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
My recollection is, and I'm going off the top of my head, but I believe they would be regulated as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad definition of secondhand dealer. It's entities that buy and sell and used goods for the most part.
Okay. Yeah, I know I talked to Mr. Souza after that first hearing, and, he conveyed to me that, most of his customers, and I think he said it in public, most of his customers are repeat customers. He knows who they are. So if that's his line of work, this should have no impact. If he's got a customer base that is not on the up and up and they're stolen goods, I'm sure he would not want to be participate in that, I would assume. So he shouldn't experience a loss of business, right? I mean, he shouldn't worry about someone who's afraid of having their item pictured, so, again, I think it's really about the victims here in this case. So I'm fully supportive of it, so I'm ready to go.
Good, okay. Any other comments from commissioners on this? Gary, what's our next action on this? Do we take a vote?
So you have another public hearing coming up, I believe, in 2 weeks, and that would be the chance for you to make your final decision. Is that correct, Stephen?
That's correct, Gary.
Okay, we will have that public hearing scheduled as soon as we can. Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for making the adjustments and reaching out. I, too, talked to Steve Souza, just as a heads up, and listened to his concerns. And thank you very much. Gary?
That is the last policy session. You have finished the issues list. You are done for the day.
Wow, good work, commissioners.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.